So protesters have been fighting to stop the erection of what they say is an eyesore fence around a popular beauty and swimming spot in Pigmere. Back in October, people held a peaceful protest at Pigmere Lake to block access to contractors after Pigmere Parish Council announced plans to build a fence around the open space. The Save Pigmere Lake group say they were acting to protect their rights to access to the water and have ever since been ensuring that the parish council doesn't carry out its threat. The objectors say that instead of consulting with them, the local parish council have decided to fence off the lake, depriving local people access to their normal activities. Understandably, local residents have been protesting, and the parish council has now called, or has been asked to call, for a public vote on the matter. And today, I've got Louise Johnson, who has taken part in the protest for ever since it started, probably, and Ewan Campbell, one of the local residents. They're both back here. They've been in previously back, but they're both back here in the Radio Northwich studio. Good afternoon, folks.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks.
Let me turn your mics up, then the punters can listen to you. I have to say, there's been a great deal of outpouring of dismay about the proposed actions of the parish council. I see that nearly 19,000 people have now signed the petition to have this decision reversed. Ewan, I wonder, for those listeners that aren't aware of what's been going on, I wonder if you could remind the listeners the circumstances that have brought us to this point, if you would please, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. So the issue that we have in Pigmere, particularly on sunny days in the summer, is the lake is descended on by hundreds of people, almost like a plague of biblical proportion. And when they come to the lake, a lot of them are not very respectful, so we get a lot of bad parking throughout the village. We've had instances when, unfortunately, a gentleman drowned in the lake and the emergency services couldn't access the lake because of the parking. We had a gentleman who was caught under his car when the jack collapsed, and again, the emergency services had to run down the road because they couldn't get the ambulance down the road. And the people that come along, they leave rubbish. They're very abusive to residents who maybe ask them to take their rubbish home or park in a more satisfactory way. And after the end of the day, there's just rubbish all over the field. In fact, we've been, as a group, collecting rubbish since the summer, and last Sunday we went out to collect more rubbish that's been left behind. So this is months after the last event. Right. We found drugs, we found drug paraphernalia, we found nappies, underwear, just incredible amounts of rubbish. Probably came back with 20 sacks, and there's still plenty more at Pigmere Lake to collect.
Right, okay, so obviously a great deal of antisocial behaviour over the past couple of years, and something, obviously there was a cry by the local residents for something to be done about it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think one thing we all agree is that we can't allow this situation to continue. Personally, I don't let my children go down to the lake on sunny days. I don't think it's safe or the right environment for children to be exposed to. And I think as a village, we've been asking our parish council to do things since the start of lockdown, when it really started to escalate. And although another local council, Wincham, which is also experiencing similar problems, and they've got part of the lake as well.
Right.
They've gone forward and they've talked to Cheshire East. They've now got agreement to put yellow lines around the lake.
Right.
And when we've asked our parish council to do it, all they say is, well, it takes 3 years. Well, Wincham started 3 years ago.
So Wincham have been proactive in actually taking steps?
Absolutely. And I think, that's my opinion, but our parish council seems to spend their entire time working out why they can't do something instead of working out what they can do.
Right, okay. Lou, if I can turn to you. To prevent this happening again, the parish council decided at its meeting last August that it would erect a fence, they say, following extensive consideration involving the police and Cheshire East Council on how best to mitigate the problems caused by large numbers of people flocking to the lake in summer. Did the so-called extensive consideration involve consulting with local residents?
As far as I understand, there was very little consultation at that particular time, and I think what we need to do is identify the stakeholders rather than just the residents themselves. There are a number of people who are very responsible lake users, and they primarily made up part of the protest team to say that feel that they'd been listened to when these decisions had been made, and that it had been done in a sort of slightly underhand way to kind of just suddenly put the fence up without much consultation at all. What was interesting at the time was when people at the protest started connecting with you and members of people who actually live within Pickmere, we all realised we were on the same page and that everybody wanted to find a solution. Nobody wanted this to be a particular problem, but the only people who weren't engaging at the time were the parish council who had made that decision in the first place.
Okay, for those people that don't know Pickmere Lake, okay, unfortunately some of our listeners tend to be terribly insular, I have to say. Can you just tell people how extensively is it used by wild water swimmers and what have you? Is it used quite a lot?
It's huge, and the big thing when you actually stood on that gate and started to engage in conversation with people as they were coming down is there was dog walkers, there was grandparents bringing their children to feed the ducks, there were people who, for their mental health reasons, take regular walks there. There's an awful lot of people, as well as the swimmers. The swimmers make up quite a big part of it, but the swimming community themselves are the most respectable group of people who do it in the right way for the right reasons and in a safe way. So that open conversation that we were having at the gate seemed to be the bit that had been missed by the parish council. And more frustratingly is when we went to the parish council to actually engage in conversations. I think you'll remember last time Kat and I were here talking to you about it, we'd sent letters, we'd asked very politely to say, can we engage in a discussion with you? We were told, I think, on air last time that was going to be in hand.
Correct.
And that was going to be something that did happen. And I can tell you categorically, sat here today, that still is not the case.
That's unfortunate. It really is. Lou, before I turn to you again, why the idea about the fence? Why will the fence prevent local people from enjoying the lake?
So I think there's a general consensus that there's about 6 to 10 days a year which are the extreme end of the situation, that we are trying to literally stick something up that's going to affect a community over the rest of the year for those few days. That's the main issue. I think first and foremost there's a lot of concerns around the fact that it is blocking off access to what should be community public space. It's a safety consideration because actually now you're suddenly creating a tunnel where everybody's being funneled through one particular area, which when you have a lot of people with pushchairs and dogs and trying to kind of get down, it's kind of blocking wildlife. So the wildlife themselves then have fences that they have to get through, and it's first and fundamentally it's an eyesore, and it is not going to solve the issue of those few people with antisocial behaviour coming down to Pickmere on those few days of the year.
And the idea they had behind this was that this would be on a number of weekends, from Friday to Monday, I believe, when the gates would actually be locked to prevent anybody getting to the lake. And this would be during the summer period. So this would be not just for the odd weekend, this would be for a number of consecutive weekends, would it not?
It would be, I think, my understanding is that as and when Pickmere Parish Council felt that it was a necessity that the gates would be locked, there was very little engagement and discussion around who would be the key holders, who would make those decisions, and how those decisions would be made. So what you're actually in effect doing is creating a situation where more people turn up in a shorter period of time, rather than dispersing it over a longer period of time, which tends to work pretty well at the moment.
Right, okay. I have to say, I think as a result of when you and Kat were here and we had one of the parish councillors, Sarah Flannery, here, I think the result of that was that the parish council did organise a meeting for the public in January, did they not?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was one of the results from them. And Ewan, I wonder if you could tell the listeners, just summarise what exactly happened at that meeting on the 17th of January.
So the 17th of January meeting was an extraordinary meeting. So in the original, we had a number of parishioners ask for a parish meeting. So if you have 6 parishioners, you can ask your parish council to hold a meeting where the village can talk. It was a well-attended meeting, pretty much as expected. The majority of the residents of Pickmere were against the fence. In fact, you couldn't get anyone else in the village hall. during that meeting, the chair of the parish council came up with a suggestion that the Pigmere Parish Council hold a similar poll, and if I could just verbatim quote what
Yes,
he said
please
during
do,
the meeting.
please do, yes.
He said, if people wanted to be involved with the poll, the council would come to people from all sides. So at that meeting, I think the general impression, and my impression was, that we were going to have a meeting where we sat with the parish council and we all agreed how this new poll would work. And the meeting on the 17th of January obviously was conducted as a parish meeting, so if you go online to the YouTube channel Pigmere Life, you can see all the parish meetings.
Okay.
But basically they allow people from Pigmere to ask questions at the beginning of the meeting, and then there is no response. And so at the 17th of January meeting, although people did try to engage with the parish council, they were told to not speak, and they basically told us what they were going to do for the poll. So they had already selected the question. We didn't get any discussion on that. They selected a date in half term where they know that the majority of Pigmere residents with children wouldn't be available to vote. So it's all been done to their drum, and somebody might conclude it's a way of manipulating the poll, because if the people that are most likely to vote against the fence are all off on holiday, then it's going to increase their chances of getting a better number in the vote. I don't think they'll get a majority, but
Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong, because I attended the meeting, as you did, and I was under the impression that the actual poll was organised because of the pressure from the people that were there asking for the poll to actually take place. That's right, isn't it?
yeah. And I think what we're trying to do is avoid all the costs that would be for an official poll. It'd be about 1,000.
I was going to say, it would be quite a lot of money for a parish council anyway,
Yeah.
to hold an official poll under the 72 local government towns. So it was decided to do their own type of poll for reasons best put to them, I suppose. But the details of the actual poll itself is taking place on Tuesday the 21st of February, is it not?
That's correct.
Okay, and that takes place at Pigmere Village Hall. The polling will be open from 4 o'clock until 9 o'clock in the evening. To vote, you have to attend the Village Hall on the date in person between those times. No votes will be allowed prior to or after the time stated, and potential voters will be, this is quite important, potential voters will be required to be on the electoral register of the parish and will have to provide proof of identity to the returning officer. So in other words, only local residents who actually live in Pigmere will be allowed a vote. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
How many local residents are there then? Approximately 400 not? Something like
No,
that?
I think it's probably around about 650, depends on
Right, okay.
the last census is
All right,
quite
okay.
old, but a lot of those will be children.
Right, okay. I did contact the parish council, and they did. I did speak to the clerk. I did offer them the opportunity to come on the programme to say that we were doing the feature as Sarah Flannery, but they turned that down. But I think, in fairness, they say, and this is the top of an email that came through to me, it is important that all media presenters, that includes me of course, ensure that the facts of the situation in respect to the fence proposal and the proposed parish poll are objectively reported. So, in the best means of being impartial, I shall read out this email that was sent to me. It's a little bit long, so I apologise to you and the listeners, but I think it's only fair that I actually relate what the parish council has said. They say as follows: the proposed fence. The proposal is to erect a fence incorporating field gates to enclose the land owned by the parish council at Jacobs Way, Pigmere, the so-called IROS, informal open space. The parish council land has only a restricted frontage to Pigmere Lake. The majority of lake frontage is in various private ownerships unaffected by this proposal. Such proposal results from the aim of the parish council to reduce the number of visitors to this land location in summer months, which has, particularly since the commencement of the COVID pandemic, resulted in substantial inconvenience, obstruction and indeed potential hazard to residents of Pickmere village, principally because of the large number of visitor cars that attempt to park in the village where there is virtually no off-street parking provision, which goes back to what you were saying, Kieran. Such large numbers of people also cause problems resulting from the absence of public toilets or other facilities in the village or at the lake. I don't think we go into the detail of that. The parish council has no power to prevent or restrict parking on village streets and roads. It has to rely on the limited resources of Cheshire East Council and Cheshire Police to carry out this function. The council has endeavoured to liaise on a frequent basis with these bodies, not always with success. The parish council's only power to try to limit or control numbers is its potential ability to restrict the numbers of people using its land in an attempt to dissuade potential visitors to the parish from visiting the village at peak times. In constructing the fence, the council proposed to close its land to the general public from time to time in summer months to attempt to bring about this dissuasion. For the majority of the year, the gate would remain open and the land accessible to all. The success of the council's action with regard to the operation of the fence would be reviewed once experience has been gained as to its effect in reducing the number of visitors to the village. They go on to say about the proposed parish poll. The group of objectors to the fence proposal sought to bring about a parish poll of parish electors on the question of the proposed fence. Powers exist under the Local Government Act for electors to demand such a poll, which would be carried out by the district council, but would have to be funded by the parish council, and thereby Pickmere residents at a cost estimated to upward, as you said, of £1,500. The parish council response said that it would hold its own poll of Pickmere electors, which would not incur such a level of expense, and this poll is due to take place on Tuesday the 21st of February, as I've said, between 1600 and 2100 hours. Only registered electors of Pickmere parish will be eligible to vote, since it is those people who suffer from the problems mentioned, and also fund through the parish precept the continued maintenance of the land in question. They go on to say there are no statutory rules or regulations relating to such a poll. It will be run along the lines of voting in local elections. The parish clerk for Pickmere will act as a returning officer and will be assisted by a parish clerk from an adjoining parish. The poll count will be carried out by these two persons when voting has concluded, and one member of the local committee will be able to observe the count taking place. And they finish up by saying, the results of the poll, and this is quite important, the results of the poll are not binding on the parish council. The results are not binding on the parish council, but will obviously be taken into account by the council in its future decision making. I apologise for the length of that, but I thought it only fair to put the council's statement on air. Anything you'd like to say about that, Ewan? I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I've got quite a few things to say about that.
Well, go on.
I think it's interesting and disappointing that the parish council once again failed to enter into dialogue with people, including myself as a resident. It feels a little bit like a parish meeting.
So has there been no, just let's be clear about this, has there been no dialogue since this meeting in January with any of the local residents at all?
No, at the meeting in January there was no dialogue then. There's been no dialogue since the original meeting, which was the parish meeting called by the residents of Pickmere.
Yeah.
So despite the quote that I gave from the parish chair that we were all going to be involved, this is not meant to be their meeting, not their poll. This was meant to be a village poll for the village people. And I think one of the things I because they can't shut the gates. I think this reducing visitors is it's just a red herring. The farmer next door had built a fence around the lake, and during the summer months people jumped the fence and still went to the lake. There was also damage of the fence, so they're going to put the fence up, someone's going to take it down, and the people that they want to dissuade from coming to the lake are not going to be worried about the fence, they're just going to skip over it and off they go. The other thing I'd like to point out is, they say they have no powers directly, but they can influence. As Wincham have done, they could influence the parking. Councillor Parkinson made a great suggestion that we could train official Cheshire's traffic wardens to patrol the streets on those days. And I, for one, have volunteered to be trained. I don't even want to be paid, but I'm happy to go out and be a traffic warden on those days. I think the fact that there are no rules is sort of a double-edged sword. So they can do what they want. They could allow people to have a proxy vote. They could allow people to vote outside without having to turn up at the hall. But they've chosen not to because I think they think it's in their interest. And I think the other thing is that if this was an official Cheshire East poll, they would be able to reject the question. Now, the question that they have come up with is very, very ambiguous. It says, do you support the need for a fence? So I would ask, what fence? And why is it the need for a fence? Why is it not the fence that the council...
Well, if this had been an official poll under the Local Government Act of 1970, that states quite clearly, doesn't it, that any question should not be ambiguous and must be clear that people can actually make a yes or a no vote. But that's not clear, is it? That's quite ambiguous, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think it's been taken to confuse, or maybe they didn't think long enough about what the question should be, but if they'd included more people and got more thoughts on what the question should be, it probably would have been a better question. And I think the final thing that, on their statement, I'd like to point out is that they say it's not binding, and as I said before...
I was going to ask that, yes, about it not being binding.
Yeah, so all polls are not binding. As I did last time I was on here, the Brexit poll was not binding, but it would be a very brave government that would just ignore it. But I think, what's important is, I've talked to people that are for the fence, I've talked to people who are against the fence, I talk to everybody. But I think the one thing that everyone agrees on is that the parish council have not dealt with this in a very good way, whether you're for the fence or against the fence. And so I think the poll that is binding will be the election in May, where they won't be able just to note and ignore, because once the parishes or the parishioners of the village members of Pygmy have voted, they'll either be in the parish or they won't be in the parish committee.
Yeah, good points. Lou, you any comments about the email?
I think overall Ewan has just done a fantastic job to kind of cover all of it. I think overwhelmingly it's the control that is coming through all the time, that it seems to be incredibly one-sided, and the fact that they are still dictating the rules, they're not listening. I think if you remember when Sarah was talking to us last time, she was frustrated about discussions when they were trying to talk about HS2, and one of the big things that she raised was how lack of communication was one of her biggest frustrations. And so therefore I'm going to put it back to them again, that one of the biggest frustrations is the lack of communication, the lack of transparency, the lack of openness, and the lack of engagement in wishing and wanting to respond, whether or not, as Ewan has said, whether you are for or against. It is a process that needs to be followed, and that process needs to be respected by everybody. What I would just like to do is also just congratulate Simon Reid, the chair of the council, because I do believe that he received an award for his services, a BEM in New Year's Honours this year.
He did.
For his services to Pygmy, and I believe that it was reported around the work that he had done on behalf behalf of Pickmere and the Parish Council by setting up a COVID support group, a treasure hunt in the village and a mini Olympics that they could do at home, along with obviously various other things. And I'm certainly not going to take that away from him, because I'm sure at the time it was fantastic. So let's see what he can do now in order to actually show everybody else and how he can continue his good work.
That's very magnanimous of you. Well done on that. We also give our congratulations to him for getting that award as well. I certainly picked up on what you did, Ewan, with regard to the fact that this vote won't be binding. But I think what's just as important is the fact that this vote is for the people. It's not for the parish council. It's the people. It's actually the people of the parish that actually instigated this. No, it wasn't the parish council. But again, as you quite rightly said, and the listeners did pick up on what you just said, Lou, about the fact that there has been a lack of consultation. Even the letter that went out to people in Pickmere didn't mention. It mentioned a number of alternatives last year, but it didn't mention, I believe, the erection of a fence. So people couldn't comment on that. Has the parish council given any indication what steps it might take once the poll has been conducted? Because by the sounds of it, if this isn't binding, they could just, if you like, turn the page over and get the contractors in again.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the ultimate plan. There's not much we can do to make them listen to the majority. They like to talk about democracy. They don't tend to action democracy in the way that I understand it. Even down to the poll that they're doing, they've said that an independent person can witness the count, but an independent person can't witness the voting, which to me seems a bit weird, because in a general election there's one person whose responsibility is to make sure the voting is done to the law, and then there's another person who's responsible for making sure that the count's done properly. So I don't see how this independent or this person who represents the villagers will know that the count is solid if they haven't seen the voting process. And the council, they've got nothing to hide. So if you've got nothing to hide, then let somebody in.
Well, surely you should approach them and actually suggest that somebody is present on behalf of the actual voters themselves to actually be there and witness the actual voting process as it takes place, not just the count.
Yes, and an email has been sent to the clerk.
Has it?
And the clerk's response was no. If you go on to this...
What reason did he give for that?
It's their poll, they can do what they want.
But it isn't their poll.
No, they believe it is. Maybe I should publish that email online, but they are a law unto themselves. And I think it's very disappointing that we can't have a representative of the village. I don't care if they're pro or against the fence. I just want someone to be there to make everyone feel it was a fair poll. And I think the issue we have is, without that person, it doesn't appear to be a fair poll. And also, if people can't vote because they're away on half-term holiday, and people will have spent a lot of money to go on holiday, they're not going to cancel that just to go on the fence. Then how can it be universally accepted when people don't know that the process has been done fairly? And a lot of people will be feeling, well, I didn't even get a chance to vote on this. So it really is quite peculiar to me that this is the way that the parish council think they're going to solve this question.
Would there be somebody available to actually attend the actual voting process itself?
Yes, and interesting, we have suggested someone to do that. And if you go on to, again, off the video, you'll see that the parish meeting, they communicated in the meeting, which is how they do respond to questions, that they had a suggestion from one group, but it was for all the groups to get together and between them work out, so all the interested parties, all the stakeholders get together and work out who they wanted that person to be. But I certainly don't know who the other groups are. They may know who the other groups are. So how do I get together with these other groups to select somebody? And I don't know who they are. It just seems bizarre. It seems to be a way of making sure that nobody, in the end, gets to do that.
Okay, all right. So the vote will take place on Tuesday, the 21st of February. That's at Pickmere Village Hall. The polling will open at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It will close at 9 o'clock in the evening to vote. You have to attend the village hall, unfortunately. There can't be any proxy voting, unfortunately, if you're going to be away. You actually have to be at the village hall to vote. No votes will be allowed prior to or after the time stated, as postal votes are in normal elections. Potential voters will be required to be on the electoral register of the parish and will have to provide proof of identity to the returning officer in accordance with current rules for local elections. So as the results of the poll reveal a majority against the erection of the fence, will that be it? To me, it sounds as if it won't.
No, I don't.
Is it going to achieve anything?
I think it will underline to the people of Pigmere what the will of the people of Pigmere is, and I think that will be very helpful when it comes to the parish council elections, because I think if the council were to ignore the vote, I think there'd be a lot of angry people in Pigmere who probably wouldn't have got out of their house and gone and voted for a parish council, but maybe this year they will.
Okay, Lou, I'll leave the last word to you.
We gave as a group a commitment that we wanted to look after Pigmere, that we value Pigmere, even as non-residents, and the success of the litter pick that you mentioned earlier on has now been scheduled that it will be every month, and extra sessions will be put through on the bank holidays as well, and that's just a way for the Friends of Pigmere to show their commitment into trying to preserve and look after what is a beautiful natural spot for everybody to enjoy.
Okay, well said. So that's it then. The poll will take place, just to repeat, on Tuesday the 21st of February. That's at Pigmere Village Hall. People can go and vote, or have to vote in person, between the hours of 4 o'clock and 9 o'clock. But the decision isn't binding on the parish council. It remains to be seen what the impact will be on any decisions that they make after that vote is actually taking place. But as you quite rightly say, people quite have the right in the local government elections in May to do as they see fit anyway. Louise, thank you very much for coming in. I'm sure it's not going to be the last time. You and to you as well. Enjoy Murrayfield, because I believe you're going up to Murrayfield. Enjoy the weekend, and thank you very much for both of you for coming in. We await with great interest